The challenge came unexpectedly during a charity gala in Manhattan. Sean "Diddy" Combs was working the room, his usual confident swagger commanding attention from everyone present. He had built an empire through sheer determination: music, fashion, spirits, media. Every venture touched by his golden hands seemed to flourish. But then Father Samuel approached him between conversations, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the glittering chaos around them. "Mr. Combs," the priest said quietly, "I have a challenge for you." Diddy paused, intrigued. He was used to challenges, they fueled him. "I'm listening, Father. I want you to prove or disprove the existence of God through your influence, your resources, your network. You're a man who makes things happen, Sean. You believe in results, success, and power. So let's see if you can find the truth about God through the very empire you've built." Diddy raised an eyebrow, his mind already racing. "That's quite a bold request, Father," he said, his entrepreneurial instincts kicking in. "But where do we even start?" Father Samuel smiled slightly. "We start with faith, Mr. Combs. Faith and a willingness to explore beyond what we can control." Neither of them knew that this conversation would lead to discoveries that would shake the world. Diddy wasn't one to back down from a challenge. The moment Father Samuel had laid down the gauntlet, something sparked in his mind. This wasn't about proving anyone right or wrong, it was about the pursuit of truth, something Diddy valued above all else in his business dealings. After their initial meeting, Diddy returned to his penthouse office, thinking about how to tackle this monumental task. Where does one even begin to prove the existence of God? He muttered under his breath. The next morning, he gathered his top executives, researchers, and advisors. "We're going to explore something different," he announced. His team, used to ambitious projects involving entertainment, fashion, and media empires, looked at him with puzzled expressions. "What exactly are we exploring?" one of his executives asked. Diddy took a deep breath. "God," he said simply. The room fell silent. "We've explored every market, created cultural movements, and built brands that define generations. Yet there are questions we still haven't answered. Father Samuel challenged me to prove or disprove the existence of a higher power, and I think it's time we tackle that question with the same intensity we bring to everything else." The team was skeptical at first, but as Diddy laid out his plan, curiosity grew. "If anyone can approach this with fresh perspective and unlimited resources, it's us," Diddy said. "We've always questioned the boundaries of what's possible. This is no different." And so they began. 4 weeks. They worked around the clock. They contacted the world's leading theologians, philosophers, and scientists. They funded research at prestigious universities, deployed cutting-edge technology to analyze religious texts and artifacts, and used their media connections to gather stories of unexplained phenomena from around the globe. They programmed AI systems to analyze patterns in religious experiences, hoping to uncover a design too intricate to be coincidental. Quantum computers were pushed to their limits, processing vast amounts of spiritual testimony and miraculous claims in search of the unexplainable. But with each passing day, the answers seemed farther away. The deeper they delved into the question, the more complex it became. "What are we really looking for?" one of Diddy's lead researchers asked one night as they sat in the dimly lit conference room. "Are we expecting a voice from heaven? A miracle on demand?" Diddy sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I don't know," he admitted, "but there has to be something out there, something we've overlooked." And then, just when they were about to give up, a new discovery sent shock waves through the team. One evening, as the team was reviewing testimonies from people claiming spiritual experiences, an pattern emerged. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it was there, the common thread running through thousands of accounts from different cultures, different time periods, different backgrounds. "What is this?" Diddy asked, leaning over the computer screen. His lead researcher, Dr. Williams, squinted at the data. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not a coincidence, not a cultural phenomenon, not even psychological suggestion, but it's something." The team was thrown into a frenzy. They reanalyzed the data, brought in experts from every field, and examined the pattern from every possible angle, and yet it remained a strange, inexplicable consistency that seemed to pulse through human spiritual experience across all boundaries. "It's like," Dr. Williams began, her eyes wide with disbelief, "it's like there's a universal frequency that people tap into." Diddy's heart raced as he stared at the data. "A frequency?" he echoed, almost disbelieving. For a man who had built his life on control and influence, The idea that there was some universal connection felt impossible, but the data didn't lie. There was something out there, something they couldn't explain. The team worked tirelessly trying to understand the nature of this unseen force. It didn't behave like anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't physical. It wasn't measurable in the traditional sense, but it was real. The pattern they detected seemed to flow through everything's cultures, individuals, even historical events. It was as if the entire human experience was connected by this invisible thread. "What are we looking at here?" Diddy asked one afternoon, frustration creeping into his voice. "Is this God?" The question hung in the air, heavy with doubt and wonder. Dr. Williams shook her head slowly. "I don't know, Sean," she admitted, "but whatever this is, it's not something we can control or manufacture." But then something even stranger happened, something that left even the most skeptical members of the team questioning everything they knew. Late one night, as the team pored over more data, the pattern shifted. The consistency, which had been steady and predictable, suddenly surged. "What's happening?" Dr. Williams exclaimed as the readings on their monitors spiked. The pattern seemed to be moving, growing stronger, as if responding to their observation. Diddy leaned over the screen, his eyes wide. "It's like it knows we're watching." The idea was absurd, but the evidence was right in front of them. The pattern, whatever it was, seemed to react to their research as if it was aware of their presence. It wasn't just a passive phenomenon, it was active, conscious even. The team was thrown into chaos. Some were thrilled, believing they had finally discovered the proof they had been searching for. Others were terrified, unsure of what this discovery meant. Diddy, usually so calm and composed, found himself shaken to his core. "If this is God," he whispered to himself, "then what does that mean for everything I've ever built?" As news of the discovery spread, the world erupted in debate. Scientists, philosophers, religious leaders, and ordinary people were all asking the same question: what does this mean? For centuries, humanity had debated the existence of God, but now, with this strange pattern uncovered, those debates took on new urgency. Some researchers hailed the discovery as proof of a higher power, while others remained skeptical. "It's just another unexplained phenomenon," one prominent scientist argued during a televised debate. "We've encountered patterns in human behavior before. This is no different." But those who had worked on the project, who had seen the data with their own eyes, knew there was something more to it. Father Samuel, who had sparked this entire journey, remained calm as the world argued. When asked by a reporter how he felt about Diddy's discovery, he simply smiled. "Faith has never been about proof," he said. "It's about trust. What Sean Combs has found is something beyond human control, something that speaks to the very core of our existence." Diddy, however, wasn't so sure. "Is this really proof of God?" he asked himself late one night, staring out at the city lights from his penthouse. The discovery had shaken him, but it hadn't given him the answers he was looking for. Instead, it had only raised more questions. And then, just when Diddy thought he had reached the end of his journey, a revelation occurred that would change everything once again. One evening, while Diddy was alone in his office, the pattern returned. The consistency surged through the data stronger than ever before, but this time it wasn't just numbers on a screen. Diddy felt something powerful and indescribable. It was as if the universe itself was speaking to him. For the first time in his life, Sean Combs felt small, not in the way one feels when facing a business rival or a financial setback, but in a much deeper, more profound way. "Is this what faith feels like?" he wondered, his heart pounding. The discovery had brought him closer to understanding something greater, but it had also humbled him. In that moment, Diddy realized that some things could not be controlled through influence, money, or power alone. Maybe, he thought, this is the proof Father Samuel was talking about, not in the form of data or influence, but in the form of something much deeper. As he sat in the quiet of his office, Diddy finally understood what the priest had been trying to tell him all along. As Diddy sat in the silence of his office, the weight of everything he had learned pressed down on him. He stared at the data on the screen, the pattern pulsing like a heartbeat. For the first time, it didn't feel like a problem to solve or a market to conquer. It felt like an answer that wasn't meant to be monetized or controlled, but simply accepted. The sensation coursing through him wasn't just ambition, it was humility, a deep realization of how small he was in the grand tapestry of existence. And yet, in his smallness, he also felt connected to something vast, something eternal. "Is this what faith feels like?" he whispered, his voice barely audible in the stillness of the room. For so long, Diddy had believed that influence was the key to everything, that with enough power, enough connections, he could control any situation. But now, in this quiet moment, he began to understand that some truths were not meant to be controlled, they were meant to be felt, lived, and experienced in a way that transcended the limits of human ambition. His thoughts turned to Father Samuel. The priest had been right all along, but not in the way Diddy had expected. The proof he had sought was not in patterns or data, it was in the surrender to something greater than himself. It was in acknowledging that, for all his success and achievements, there were still things beyond his control. Tears welled up in Diddy's eyes, an unfamiliar feeling for a man who had always prided himself on his strength and determination. I've been chasing success my whole life, he thought, but maybe the real success was just to let go. He wiped his eyes, breathing deeply as the wave of emotion washed over him. The pattern continued to pulse gently on the screen, like a silent reminder that the universe was alive and so much more than anyone could ever fully comprehend. Diddy left his office that night with a weight lifted from his heart, yet his mind was still processing. The conversations with Father Samuel had sparked a shift in him, but something deeper was brewing beneath the surface, an unshakable need to reflect on the empire he had built, the values that had driven him, and the legacy he was creating. The discovery of the pattern had been the catalyst, but now it felt like the real journey was just beginning. As Diddy drove home through the city streets, his thoughts drifted back to his childhood in Harlem. He had always been driven, always pushing forward. It was his need to succeed, to rise above his circumstances, that had fueled his ascent to greatness. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten how to listen to the quiet, unspoken truths that didn't come from boardrooms or balance sheets. The house was peaceful when he arrived. His children were already asleep, and Kim was reading in the living room. She looked up as he entered, sensing the change in him immediately. "You're different tonight," she said gently, closing her book and giving him her full attention. Diddy sat beside her, running a hand over his face. "I don't know how to explain it," he confessed. "It's like I've been building this empire my whole life, but I think I was missing something. There's more to life than just success and influence. There's a connection, a force that I've been blind to." She listened quietly, her hand resting on his. "And now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Diddy met her gaze, his heart full. "Now I want to find that balance. I want to keep building, keep pushing boundaries, but I also want to be present. I want to listen more, to be more aware of the things I can't see or control." The weight of his words settled between them, heavy with the promise of change. Kim nodded, understanding that this wasn't just about business or discovery, this was about life, about being fully alive in a way Diddy hadn't allowed himself to be before. As they sat together in the quiet of their home, Diddy felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. The city lights outside continued their eternal dance, and for the first time, he didn't feel the need to reach out and control them. He was content to simply admire their beauty, knowing that some things were meant to remain beyond his influence. The days that followed were unlike any Diddy had ever experienced. He moved through his life with a newfound sense of calm, no longer driven by the relentless need to dominate every situation. The pattern remained a constant presence in his mind, but instead of obsessing over it, Diddy began to see it as a reminder, an invitation to let go. His colleagues noticed the change. The intense, restless energy that had once defined him was replaced by a quiet determination. Diddy still pursued his goals with the same passion, but now there was a softness in his approach, a willingness to let things unfold naturally rather than forcing every outcome. One evening, Diddy found himself on the rooftop of his building, gazing out at the city skyline. His thoughts drifted back to the church, to Father Samuel's words about faith. He realized that faith wasn't about blindly believing in something without proof, it was about trusting that the universe had a plan, even if he couldn't control it. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his youngest daughter, who was upstairs getting ready for bed. "Daddy, can you come read to me?" the message read. Diddy smiled and pocketed his phone. Making his way upstairs, he found her lying in bed, surrounded by her favorite books. Diddy sat down on the edge of the bed, brushing a hand through her hair. "Daddy," she said, looking up at him with wide, curious eyes, "do you think we'll ever know everything about everything? Like all the secrets in the world?" Diddy hesitated for a moment, thinking of all the times he had asked himself similar questions, but now his answer was different. "I think," he said slowly, "some secrets are meant to stay secret, and maybe that's what makes life so special, it's full of mysteries we might never solve." She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "That's kind of cool," she said, snuggling deeper into her blankets. It's like a big adventure we'll never finish. Diddy smiled, his heart swelling with love for his daughter. Exactly, he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. And that's okay. Some adventures are meant to be enjoyed, not completed. As Diddy left the room, he felt a profound sense of contentment wash over him. The universe, with all its mysteries and unanswered questions, was still out there. But for now, he was exactly where he needed to be. Months passed, and the world continued to turn as it always did. The pattern remained unsolved, a riddle that still fascinated researchers around the globe. But for Diddy, it had become something more, a symbol of the beauty in the unknown. He continued his work, pushing the boundaries of business and culture, but now with a deeper sense of purpose. He wasn't just building companies or creating brands for the sake of success. He was doing it with the knowledge that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved, and that was part of what made them so beautiful. One evening, Diddy was invited to speak at a conference where entrepreneurs and thinkers from around the world gathered to discuss the future of business and society. As he took the stage, the room fell silent, eager to hear from the man who had so often been at the forefront of cultural change. Diddy looked out at the audience, the bright lights of the stage casting long shadows. For a long time, he began, his voice calm and measured. I believed that if we worked hard enough, if we gathered enough influence, we could control everything, shape every outcome, dominate every market the world had to offer. He paused, letting his words sink in. But over the past year, I've come to realize that some things are beyond our control, and that's not something to fear, it's something to embrace. The audience was still, hanging on his every word. The pattern we discovered, what some are calling proof of God, it may never be fully understood. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not meant to be controlled, but to remind us that the universe is far greater and more complex than we could ever imagine. He looked out at the faces in the crowd, seeing a reflection of his own past hunger for dominance. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is accept that we don't have all the answers, and in that acceptance, we find peace. The room erupted in applause as Diddy stepped down from the stage, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He had spent so much of his life trying to control everything around him, but now he understood that the real power was found in the quiet moments of surrender, in the acceptance of the unknown. Diddy returned home that evening, his heart full. As he walked through the door, Kim greeted him with a warm smile, their children playing nearby. The house was filled with the sound of laughter, the kind that made everything else fade away. As they sat down to dinner, Diddy felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life he had built. The discovery of the pattern had changed everything, but it wasn't the discovery itself that mattered, it was what it had taught him, that life was not a game to be won, but a gift to be cherished. Later that night, as Diddy stood on his balcony looking out at the city lights, he felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. The universe, with all its mysteries and wonders, stretched out before him, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel the need to conquer it. He was content to simply be a part of it, knowing that some things were meant to remain a mystery, and in that mystery, he had found the greatest truth of all, the quiet miracle of life itself. As the lights twinkled below him, Diddy smiled, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. He had found what he had been searching for all along, not in the data or the discoveries, but in the simple act of letting go. And in that surrender, he had found the peace he had always longed for. For the first time in a long while, Sean Diddy Combs wasn't racing ahead of life, he was finally walking alongside it. That peace he had longed for, the one that had always eluded him, felt tangible now, like a warm embrace. He had spent decades thinking that his purpose was to build every empire, influence every market, and reach the top at any cost. But standing there under the quiet city sky, he realized that the most profound journey wasn't one of ambition or control, but one of the heart. The pattern was still unsolved. It was still an enigma, a beautiful question that had no clear answer. And yet, instead of frustration, Diddy now felt a strange sense of comfort in that uncertainty. It was as if the universe itself was whispering to him, you don't need to control everything. You don't need to have all the power. Just be. As he looked at the city lights, tears welled up in his eyes, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the journey, for the lessons learned along the way, and for the people who had stood by him through it all. His mind wandered to his children, his family, and the friends who had supported him. In their love and laughter, he had found a new kind of success, one that could never be measured in wealth, fame, or business achievements. He thought of his daughter's question from days before, do you think we'll ever know everything about everything? Diddy smiled to himself, realizing that the wisdom he had been searching for had been right there in his child's innocent words. Life was a journey, an adventure filled with wonder and mystery, not something to be conquered. There would always be questions, always be things left undiscovered, and maybe that was the beauty of it all. He found Kim still awake when he went back inside. She had a quiet presence that always grounded him. She looked at him, eyes soft with understanding, as if she could see right through him to the transformation happening inside. "You've been outside a while," she said gently, her voice a soft melody in the stillness of their home. Diddy nodded, wiping away the last remnants of his tears. "I was just thinking about everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "For so long, I thought success meant controlling everything, building the biggest empire, but now I think the real success is right here." Kim took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You've always been chasing something bigger," she said, her words full of love. "But sometimes the biggest discoveries happen inside us, not out there." Diddy met her gaze, feeling the truth in her words deep within his soul. "I think you're right," he whispered. "I've been searching for so long, but I didn't realize that everything I needed was right in front of me all along." They sat together in the soft glow of the room, the silence between them speaking louder than words. In that moment, Diddy knew that he had finally come home, not just to the house they shared, but to himself. He had found a peace that transcended the drive for success, the need for control. He had found the quiet miracle of contentment, of being present in the life he had built. As the days turned into weeks, Diddy's life took on a new rhythm. He still worked hard, after all. It was in his nature to be ambitious, to innovate, but the frantic pace, the need to constantly chase after something more, had slowed. He made more time for his family, more time for himself. He found joy in the simple things, sitting at the breakfast table with his kids, taking long walks with Kim, and reading stories to his daughter before bed. These were moments he used to overlook, but now they were the moments that brought him the most joy. One afternoon, as he sat in his office reviewing plans for a new venture, he received a call from his mother, Janice Combs. It had been weeks since they last spoke, and as soon as he heard her voice, something inside him softened. "Sean," she said, her tone warm but curious, "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Are you doing okay?" Diddy leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes as he listened to her voice. "Yeah, Mom, I'm doing good, better than I've been in a long time, actually." There was a pause on the other end, and he could almost picture his mother raising an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "You sound different," she said. "What's changed?" Diddy thought for a moment, trying to find the words to explain what had been happening inside him. "I've just been thinking a lot about life, about what really matters, and I realized that I've spent so much of my life trying to control everything that I forgot to appreciate what I already had." His mother didn't say anything for a moment, but when she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Sean, I'm so proud of you, not for your success or the businesses or any of that, but for realizing what's truly important." Tears welled up in Diddy's eyes again, and he swallowed hard. "Thanks, Mom. That means more to me than you know." As they continued to talk, Diddy felt a deep sense of healing begin to take root. The conversations with his family, with Kim and his children, and now with his mother, were all part of a larger picture. He had spent so many years building things, companies, brands, empires, but now he was rebuilding something far more important, his heart. Months passed, and Diddy found himself returning to the pattern every now and then, but with a much lighter touch. The world's greatest minds still pondered it, and debates raged on about what it could mean if it was truly proof of a higher power, a glitch in human consciousness, or something else entirely. But for Diddy, the mystery no longer consumed him. He had let go of the need for definitive answers. One evening, he returned to the small church where it had all started. He wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was for closure, or perhaps it was to thank Father Samuel for the role he had played in his transformation. As he entered, the same sense of peace enveloped him, but now it felt familiar, like an old friend. Father Samuel was there, organizing hymnals, and when he saw Diddy, his face lit up with recognition. "Sean," he said, a smile spreading across his face, "it's good to see you again." Diddy nodded, feeling a surge of emotion rise within him. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last time," he began, his voice steady, "about faith, about letting go of the need for control. I didn't get it then, but I think I do now." Father Samuel's eyes twinkled with understanding. "Faith isn't about having all the answers," he said. "It's about trusting that some things are beyond us, and that's okay. It's about finding peace in the unknown." Diddy smiled, feeling those words settle deep within him. I've spent my whole life trying to control everything, trying to build the biggest empire possible. But now I realize that the real gift is in surrendering to the mystery. Father Samuel nodded, his expression soft. And in that surrender, you found something far greater than any business success. Diddy stood in silence for a moment, looking around the church. The candles flickered softly, their light dancing on the walls. He felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him for the journey he had been on, for the lessons learned, and for the peace he had finally found. As he left the church that night, Diddy knew that his life would never be the same. The city lights still called to him, the mysteries of success still beckoned, but now he walked with a different kind of strength, a strength that came not from controlling, but from accepting. And in that acceptance, he had found the peace he had longed for all his life.